Sensational Saturday. Welcome once again to another life changing edition of the D Word. This is your host, Furley Almonte, with my co host, the fabulous Carolina Denhard. Well, the D Word stands for divorce, deceit, despair, death, and disability. But today we're going to actually tackle on the word deceit. And today I could not be more thrilled that we actually have two legal eagles to be discussing this topic on deceit, because we have, of course, our founder of the Divorce Dynasty, Carolina Denhart, and as well as our super special guest for today, Judge Catherine Dupuy, concentrates her practice on mediation and arbitration with a focus on commercial disputes, probate mediation, and divorce mediation. She was formerly the presiding judge of the Chancery, Probate and Family Divisions of the Superior Court of New Jersey, Union County. Judge Dupuy brings a wealth of experience gained from her years of service in the civil service, family, and criminal divisions of the Union County Courts, and now is in private practice at the Lindaberry McCormick, where my co-host Carolina Denhard is a partner. Ladies, take the floor.
So it is just such a pleasure to have Judge Dupuy here. Being an attorney in Union County, I've had the pleasure of knowing the judge on the other side of this conversation before she joined Lindaberry. And yes, now she is in private practice, and we do have the immense honor of having a judge on staff and handling mediations and arbitrations. But why I'm so happy today is because the judge and I may not exactly see everything eye to eye when it comes to claiming adultery, or what you do with that type of a cheating husband claim. I'm going to be sexist for the purposes of this show. But we do understand that the court system is a place where some wrongs need to be made right. And we've had a long conversation about the fact that there was an amendment to our statute. When you plead for divorce, right, pre-amendment, you had to prove fault. And one of those fault grounds was indeed adultery, abandonment, alcoholism, extreme mental cruelty. Post modification of the statute, we now have something called irreconcilable differences. And being a woman that filed for divorce before the modification of the statute, I can tell you that I could see from both sides of the aisle why somebody may want to file an adultery claim, and why it's better that we can now simply say, I don't like you, you don't like me. For the last 6 months, our marriage has been irretrievably broken and we're leaving. So, Judge, before we go into when we plead this, would you agree that our legislature made the right move by offering litigants irreconcilable differences rather than having to prove who slept with whom, when, and how often?
Yes, but let me just for a brief moment say I am appearing in my private capacity. I'm no longer an active judge, and what I say does not go for other judges. Now, as to your point, it's terrific. Irreconcilable differences is so much better than having to prove fault. You have a family, you want to move on in most cases. You do not want to get mired down in finding fault or he's an alcoholic, or just better to get the facts in front of the judge and move forward.
So, Judge, and of course, what we want to do for all of our families, Furley, and you know that this is the mantra of Divorce Dynasty, the entire platform, that we want to plug in the services that are necessary to help you move on expeditiously, financially, to not bankrupt your marital estate because you want to prove that you're right. We want to move on, and the judge makes an excellent point. But there are situations, Your Honor, where I believe that extreme situations where we must plead adultery and or simply a dissipation claim, because we have situations where someone is living the classic term, the double life. Somebody has another apartment, another house. They're spending substantial marital money on the new girlfriend, the new boyfriend. We have cases that come in where this isn't an affair that lasted a month. It lasted years. And all of a sudden, this wife that's now being left behind is questioning if she has an opportunity to claw back some of those funds that were spent on Mr. establishing his new life. Judge, what do you say about that?
You've just given me so many things to talk about. Let's start with the clawback to begin with. Regardless of what you plead, you're going to bring that fact up to the court. He's been going to Tahiti with his girlfriend and I didn't know about it. A court is going to look at that. And help you get that money back. It is the fair, just thing to do, and it is what the legislature tells us to do. We have to equitably divide everything. Now, how you go about that is a little bit of a different story. You can plead alimony, or you can, in the course of your reconcilable differences, say, he doesn't back me up, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that, and he committed adultery, and he did it for 3 years. If you plead adultery, it's a lot of work. You're going to have to find the correspondent. You're going to have to name the correspondent. You and whoever that person is are obviously going to be in a battle for the rest of your lives, probably while you're raising your children. So keep your eye on the prize. The eye on the prize is getting divorced and getting out of this fairly. I don't think in the average case you need to plead adultery, because why are you pleading adultery? To let the judge know he can't be trusted? Well, yeah, you're going to be able to tell that pretty quickly. But there are factors. The judge picks alimony and equitable distribution not by how they felt that morning, but by what the statute says. So the statute lists all these things we can take into account. Education of the person, contributions to marriage. There is a catch-all that is, and any other thing that is relevant. But there's no case law now saying alimony is one of those relevant things. So I would definitely listen to your attorney. It is rarely worth the expense of chasing an alimony claim, and you're pouring oil on the fire.
An adultery claim, Judge. An adultery claim, not an alimony claim, an adultery claim.
Sorry. But listen to your attorney. There are cases where it is appropriate, and your attorney is the one, such as Carolina, who's had a lot of experience, will be able to tell you which cases it is appropriate and which cases it is not worth the effort to do.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Say, for example, somebody like an ordinary person who's hurting. Obviously, divorce is a very, very emotional thing. Like, I need closure. I need to be able to prove to my friends and my family that it was not me who actually caused the marriage to fail. So how do you address that?
That is not what a judge does. That's not what in mediation, you can talk about it, but a judge is not going to decide who was at fault. You can see the layers of things we would get into. Was the wife unkind and didn't back him up, therefore he thinks he was okay to commit adultery? The judge doesn't go through those layers in divorcing you. There might be some appropriateness, certainly, when you get to who's going to have custody of the children, as to who's trustworthy and who's not. But the judge doesn't usually go through those. If you're really struggling, if you're really having a hard time with those issues, talk to your attorney, and especially a therapist is huge in these kinds of things. You need someone to just be able to pick up the phone and vent to, like, that blankety blank son of a what. But it's not the judge.
Yeah, I like to say that the divorce complaint is not your Dear Diary. This is not the time to lay out every hurt feeling that you have. And where there are the facts support an adultery cause of action or a marital dissipation cause of action, it has to rise to something high enough where it's worth your time, right? So if your husband is a cheating spouse and he, cheats with this one, cheats with that one, goes to the Olive Garden, goes here, goes there, and he's basically, maybe even paying for a hotel room here and there, that's not going to be worth your time likely. But we've had those situations where someone's engaged in a multi-year relationship, 3 out of 4 or 5 nights a week, he's out with this person. He's buying drink and food. Hotels are often, maybe they're traveling together. Maybe he's paying for her car. Maybe he rented an apartment. Those situations need to be treated seriously because money from the marital pot has been taken away to set up your new relationship. So that's where when people ask me, does cheating matter? The answer is it may. It's not an automatic no. It may, but it has to make sense. But the judge just raised a very good point when it comes to custody of the children. If you are a spouse, and let's be sexist again, you're the father, and you are carrying on an affair, and you don't come home, you don't go to the baseball games, you don't spend time with your kids, you're out and about, and all of a sudden divorce happens. And now you're taking the position that mom isn't capable of raising the kids, you want 50-50, 70-30, whatever it is, but you were never home. How does that reconcile with the fact that you didn't care enough to be there in the first place? And Judge, you and I spoke about this morning a little bit, and you had some good insight on that.
I don't know if you just saw my reaction. If dad is out fooling around rather than a kid's baseball game, he is getting no points with me and is almost starting behind the 8 ball, trying to get a lot of time with his children. That's horrible. I mean, if you get divorced, in order for your children to emerge emotionally healthy, dad has got to stay in their life. You don't want a 17-year-old who's seeking attention from men. That's not going to go well. So we need to keep dad in the child's life, usually in some fashion. But the fact that he has cheated is going to affect the judge in that he's been lying to his wife. He's been lying about the credit cards. He's been dissipating the assets. Well, is he lying to me now when he says he has the kid's best interest at heart? Is he now all of a sudden going to start showing up for baseball games when he didn't these last couple of years? That he doesn't get a fresh start the minute he gets divorced. He's got his history that he's got to deal with in order to convince the judge that he needs more time with the kids or whatever it is.
I have a question for both of you, actually, because I'd love to hear your insights on this case. Do you see the cases differently if somebody is like, say, for example, a high net worth individual, somebody who's a celebrity, as opposed to people who are, average people with normal middle income? So do you see that differently as opposed to those celebrities?
With regard to adultery?
Adultery, and also, like, say, for example, for as far as the judgment with money, alimony.
No, I'll answer first. I mean, every case is obviously different, and the law applies to the guy that makes $100 and the guy that makes $100 million, right? So, as the judge pointed out, there's a statute. You go through the marital estate, you go through what's there, and we apply the factors to resolve each case: alimony, equitable distribution, assets, liabilities, and so on. Same thing with the children. Just because you have more money doesn't mean you're a better parent. Maybe you're a worse parent. So we apply the law. But interesting point, Furley, that you do raise that makes me think of something. Sometimes we find that with celebrities or with people that are in that world, that there's an acceptance of maybe looking the other way by some of these women that, well, I have a certain lifestyle, and so I kind of think my husband is doing a couple things, but I don't want anything disturbed. And I, for one, take the position that you can't now be mad and surprised and angry and pleading adultery where you look the other way for a lot of years because it benefited you. And that's a hard conversation to have with some of my potential female clients. Judge, what do you say?
You hit the nail on the head. You're treated the same way. The statute says all the same things. Nothing is different because you're a celebrity. It doesn't make a difference. But you raise, a personal issue. Are you looking the other way because you like all the money? We all know people who have done that, maybe some in the popular press frequently now. And, you have a lot of trouble convincing a judge that, now that he's lost his money, I'm going to sue him on adultery. That, you would let it go on all along.
Yeah, and it's very important, Furley, to take a look at the facts, because if I'm the spouse that received this complaint for divorce and the wife named my girlfriend as a co-defendant, I'm responding back saying, I may be a bad guy, and yes, I may have done this, but I did it 10 times before, and she knew about it, and nothing happened. So you have to be careful of what facts are going to come out, because just like Judge makes a good point. We look at the character of the cheating spouse, but we also look at the character of the spouse that may have known about it and how that marriage was operating. Obviously, if the person didn't know anything and they are shocked, and these are the worst case scenarios where the husband is still sleeping with his wife while he has a girlfriend, because the wife is thinking everything's going just fine. He comes home, we have sex, we go on vacation, we have family dinners. That's where the rug is pulled from underneath you. And those are the cases that are the most gut-wrenching and tragic. But again, if there's not going to be a financial component to this or makes sense to plead this, then you know what? It's a call to a support system to talk it through, because it is hurtful.
My God, I actually thought of something. What if, for example, they're kind of like estranged and they're not yet divorced, and then this husband actually decides to propose to the new girlfriend and gives her a $3 million ring, while during the time that they're of the marriage. How do you deal with that?
Well, $1.5 million comes back to the wife now, because he doesn't have a right to give away $3 million of their money. He bought the ring with some of his wife's money.
Exactly. And we have people, Furley, that, and sometimes they think they're doing the right thing, right? They'll rent an apartment, they'll move out. They're like, I don't want to cheat. I want to be honest. I don't want to bring this into our family. But at that point, while you're still married, and if there's no complaint for divorce filed or a cutoff date agreed upon, you're still in the marital pot. So if you're taking money out of TD Bank and writing checks to your new landlord and your new expenses, I'm going to have a problem with that if I represent the wife, because I appreciate that you don't want to come home and continue lying and cheating, but we have to be smart about this. We have to be smart about how we do this, because once you open the door to spending money on a third party, it's like a floodgate, and you need to really be able to control that. It's what the judge said when we were talking this morning. What passes the smell test? What's going to raise the judge's eyebrow about character or spending or opening up new credit cards to try to hide your affair? What's going on here? And then you start peeling back the onion. How far do you go?
So if there is a wife right now who's suspicious that her husband is cheating on her, what would you advise? Both of you can answer this question. What would you advise them to do if they are already contemplating on divorcing?
Carolina, why don't you take that?
I would say these are some of the most difficult conversations you're going to have with the person you're married to. And in my experience, the reaction is, are you crazy? You're always suspicious. I'm always bad. I'm always wrong. So 9 out of 10 times, the spouse is not going to admit to what's going on, because there's a lot that could, obviously the marriage could end. There could be a fallout. They don't want to disclose who the girlfriend really is. It's not a comfortable conversation. Few will actually say, you know what, I'm sorry. This is what I'm doing. I think that it's important to know before you make the accusation, but then, how far do you go with hiring a private investigator? We have somebody on the Divorce Dynasty platform, obviously, and Furley, you just introduced us to a brand new person as well, to get you the information. But then what do you do with it? Do you need to know because you need to know that he's sleeping with somebody else to pull the plug? Or are you suspicious about the finances? And that's where you have more control. Even if you are the stay-at-home wife and you don't take part in paying bills and you leave the finances up to your husband, it's never too late to get involved. You could say to him, I'd like to be more involved, because even if we never get divorced, you may get hit by a train, you might die of a heart attack, anything could happen. So can we sit down with an estate planning lawyer and look at our finances? And that's a really good way of getting the full picture. And if all of a sudden you get the credit cards and things aren't adding up and there's debt being incurred, or, he's renting another apartment, all of a sudden he wants the little crash pad in Manhattan, those are the telltale signs. And then you have to start getting prepared. Judge?
Carolina, you mentioned that. I think one of the most important things to do is to talk to an attorney. You're only talking. Spend a few $100, talk to an attorney who can then put all the factors Carolina has talked about into a context. Whether you want to know if he's cheating for yourself, you want to walk away from the marriage, or whether you need to plan in terms of an alimony claim, that's for your attorney to help you out.
Judge, I have a question. You are also a divorce mediator.
I am.
When should somebody consider doing just mediation as opposed to going through the whole divorce proceeding?
Really, anytime. You can go to mediation before you even file papers. If this is a case where you and your husband both say, we've had it, we just want to divide things up, you could go then. A mediator would certainly hear the two of you and would say to you, please take this memorandum of understanding that we've decided should control, and take it to your attorneys to make sure you're both protected. But what is more common is there's already litigation and the attorneys are going to court. That is an instance where people come in at the end, and I tell you, I don't think that's a great idea. If you come in sort of in the middle, you can at least start explaining your situation to the judge and perhaps cutting out whole parts of the case that are not a problem. You don't have to spend any more time on, and just leave. Let's use, for example, maybe the big issue in the case is, what is the electrical business worth? You could solve all your other problems and then continue to litigate what the electrical business is worth. Although even that, I do mediation, but you could also do arbitration, where a private mediator, arbitrator, listens to the testimony of the different accountants and comes up with a result. But I have to tell you, I think mediation is, aside from the fact that I'm a mediator, but when I was a judge, you always wanted the cases to go to mediation. And lots of times, the crazier the cases are, and Carolina, you've described several of them, it's not a bad idea to talk to the judge during it, who can help essentially say to cheating spouse, sooner or later, she's going to get all those records. So why don't we just put everything on the table now? Because Carolina knows what she's doing, and it'll cost her $10,000, but she's going to get to the bottom of it. So let's cough it up now.
Absolutely, and Furley, especially during COVID, where our courts initially, the courts were closed. We had online access, but we're not in court the way that we were back in the day, right? So rather than having the frustration of waiting in line to be heard, you can have the agreement of the other side to go to mediation or arbitration and expedite the process almost, because you have the attention of a former Judge Dupuy or another judge who has seen tens of thousands of cases, and nothing will surprise them. There's no shock factor. And all of a sudden, although you have to pay for the mediator or arbitrator, you might be saving yourself money in the long run, because if your case is protracted over 2-3 years in the courthouse, imagine the judge forgets the testimony, the reports have to be updated. I mean, kids grow, things change. It's going to potentially cost you more emotionally and economically. So it's always a great idea, in my opinion, to get before somebody like Judge Dupuy.
Especially in these COVID times. I can tell you in Union County, they are not trying any matrimonial cases right now. Cases are getting listed for trial, but they only have one matrimonial judge. She's got way more than she can do. Hopefully we're getting some new judges the next month or two, but it'll be, if you have a knockdown, drag out case, I don't know, what do you think, Carolina? A year and a half till you get to a judge, if not more?
Absolutely. I mean, especially if you're just filing now, by the time you do your case management conferences and your discovery and all of that. And Furley, to your point earlier, this becomes now your new life. So now not only are you hurt because maybe you caught your spouse cheating, so emotionally you're falling apart. Now you're spending all sorts of money on lawyers. Now you're in court, and it just never ends. So I like for my clients to be creative and open to suggestions of considering mediation or arbitration to at least end the hurt earlier.
So how do they come to a close? How do they move on if there is such a lag in the court system?
Well, that's exactly that's exactly the issue. It's wait in line, wait your turn. In the meantime, a case has a life, right? So we're not always in court. We may file a motion and then wait the 20 days to be heard. There's things that are going on behind the scenes, but what's important to recognize is that I go home at night, right? But if I'm divorcing you, you go home and you're living your divorce. It never stops. You're thinking of all these things. So I think that it's important to, and a judge made this point earlier, to really think about the issues. What issues do you want to advance? What makes sense in your divorce? How can we make the list that is like this to come to this? Sometimes you can't. Sometimes we have cases where you really need to spend for your forensic accountants and all this because you have to, okay? Or at least I need that information to guide my clients. But let's not make a mountain out of a molehill if we can minimize the issues and look forward. The marriage fell apart, but you're still going to co-parent your kids. You're still going to know each other. There's going to be weddings and funerals. Let's look at the bigger picture. And the adultery can't become the main item on the menu.
You are in a practice together. How do you decide who gets who? What cases are handled by either?
We're actually opposite of each other, because if I have a client, I can't have Judge Dupuy mediate the case because we're at the same firm. So it's an interesting dynamic, but this is my philosophy on building business, Furley, as you know. You take the strengths of your team, you build up the other person, and you help everybody grow. And there's people that will retain me that can't use Judge Dupuy, or will use Judge Dupuy because they're not going to retain me and they'll use somebody else. But the beautiful thing about Judge Dupuy is that she's not just a divorce mediator. She has spent her career, and Judge, I'm not going to speak for you, you could close out with this, but all sorts of civil cases. So anybody out there where you have a business dispute, and Furley, we talk about that sometimes you're divorcing your business partner, not your cheating spouse, right? Judge Dupuy speaks the language of all areas of mediation. Judge?
Well, that's true. My last 6 years have been in what we call chancery, where my primary disputes were a partnership, somebody suing Merck, your group of doctors are separating, anything of that nature. So that ability to evaluate businesses, evaluate income is very important. And you almost can't come to me saying, oh, business is so horrible, it's just dreadful, I'm on a downward slide, because it's the same story I've heard for 26 years. Everybody says that when they're getting divorced. So there's nothing you're going to pull over my eyes with that. Even with the pandemic, it's not going to last forever. So that is but let me again go back to be sure to talk to you can come to me first, but I really like you talking to Carolina first, because she would advise you as to a mediator. Actually, we've had one case where Carolina's client did come to me. The other side said it was okay. If somebody knows me, they know I'm not going to be influenced by that. But your attorney is the one who guides you in these things. And even if you don't have money for a full litigation experience, talk to her for an hour or two, get some advice, and move on. Do not talk to your girlfriends unless they happen to be a law professor, about how to handle this case. It's not, I'm sorry, they just don't know. I don't know what they do. They don't know what I do.
This is not the time to go to Google, okay?
I'm sorry, and you.
Pearlie, we talk about this all the time, that if I had to have my, foot operated on, I'm not going to go to my plumber, right? I'm going to go to the orthopedic. So people need to get the information from the best source that could educate them, because this is your platform, Pearlie, too, and everything that you do as a life coach and an insurance professional. Education is key. If you don't have the education, you're going to be making bad decisions. And just because Johnny down the street got this divorce settlement doesn't mean that you're going to get the same settlement. Every case is different. So don't try to do this at home. Don't talk to Siri. Don't talk to Google. Not the time. Not the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Judge, how is your life different now that you're retired and on private practice?
It is so hard to tell, because I miss the courthouse. I miss the pre-COVID courthouse. I don't miss the COVID courthouse. So instead of dealing with attorneys in a formal setting all the time, I'm liking this informality of getting to know people a little better on a personal level and use my skills in a different way. The mediation aspect was actually what I was pretty good at on the bench. You should realize this: 95% of all cases settle. So of all the people listening to us, who are the 5% who've got such an interesting case that it's got to go to the court? They're very few. So it's going to settle sooner or later. So I like, now that I'm on the outside, that same ability I had to, okay, folks, let's calm down, take a step back. Let's see what's likely to happen in trial. I can do that now. And I think that's a help.
How do you like things virtual now, Judge?
I miss seeing people. I like to talk to people. I think you have, Carolina, you may not like this. Sometimes, not her, sometimes the attorneys can be the problem. But if I have them in front of me, I can look at the client, look at the attorney, and speak to the client. And, I develop a rapport with the client. I can't so much do virtually. But that being said, I'm finding Zoom mediations are going fine. By now, almost everybody is used to Zoom. But if you're not, what happens is you all appear in front of me in screens. I'll say, Carolina, I want to talk to you and the other attorney for a little bit. We'll go in a breakout room. And then I'll say, Carolina, you want to go back and talk to your client about what we just said? And she'll do that. So it is working pretty well. And it saves a lot of money, because the attorneys are not charged to travel to the courthouse.
And we're not sitting in the hallway in the courthouse waiting to be heard. Something else comes up. There's an order to show cause. So it actually is a lot more economical for the clients. But I would also say that I feel like it's less formal. I feel like our clients listened a little bit better where they were in the courthouse, because you get a little bit of that panic. You're going to see the judge, right? But we are human beings. We adapt. And I think with the right team in place, with the right mediator, arbitrator, lawyer, support system, therapist, whatever you need, we're all here to help you get through it. And COVID will pass, and we'll go back to whatever that new normal will be. But divorce will never go away. And Pearlie, cheating has been happening since the beginning of time. So that's never going to go away. So we simply have to always be cognizant of what is the right thing to do for yourself, for your pocketbook, for your family.
Wow, what a beautiful insight, having the heart and the brains also to be able to, go through our life challenges, especially through deceit and divorce, right? Any last word, ladies?
Well, I would just like to say that I encourage everybody to visit Divorce Dynasty, www.divorce-dynasty.com, to learn about who we are. Essentially, it's a platform of vetted professionals coming together to plug in where you need them. When you divorce, when your spouse dies, if there's a disability in the family, or anything happens where life throws a curveball, that is not the time to be the hero or heroine of your own story. That is the time to rely on people that are experts in their fields to help you move forward. word. And one of the things, if you're divorcing and you have a complicated divorce, or you simply want to move forward without a lot of acrimony, is I think that people should consider mediation and arbitration. And retired Judge Dupuy is certainly a wonderful resource to consider in that regard.
Judge?
My advice is to keep your eyes on the prize. What are you trying to do? You want to get divorced? You want to make sure you're treated fairly? You most especially want to make sure things work well for your children, and you want to move on with your life. So keep your eye on that, so you don't spend a lot of extraneous money chasing things that are not worthwhile, and listen to your attorney, such as Carolina, who will get you there.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so very much, ladies. Oh, I hope you ladies out there, women, men, actually, I hope that you were able to get a lot of education from this very wise ladies on how you can move through your life so that it can become more seamless, more serene, and at the same time, something that would actually serve both your families and yourselves as you move forward into your dazzling new destinies. Okay, thank you so very much, Carolina and Dr. Did I say doctor?
Oh, thank you. I'll do that next.
Thank you so very much for your wise words and your, incredibly wonderful presence on the Divorce Dynasty, the D Word. I could not be more thrilled to have you and so grateful, I'm sure. If they have any questions, of course, they could reach out to the Divorce Dynasty. There is a private messaging available in there. And if they would love to be able to consult with Carolina or Judge Dupuy, please contact them. What's the best way to contact you, Carolina and Judge?
Well, just go into the Lindaberry website. Clicking on our names is the easiest thing to do, lindaberry.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much. I hope you have a spectacular Saturday and weekend. Keep your eye on the prize, right, Judge?
Thanks.
All right. Thank you so very much. Have a fabulous Saturday.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.